I also want to apologize if in the video my camera is moving a bit. I keep hitting it or I keep moving stuff around. So just be aware of that. Enjoy the video. Yo, what is going on, guys? I'm back with another review video. It is going to be on my Gamesense MVP wireless. This is a WMO inspired shape, and you can clearly tell just from the side profile that it is very, very similar. There are a lot of differences, and I do want to say I feel like this, I've never tried the WMO, but the only other comparison I do have is the Ninjutsu Katana. It is really small compared to that other mouse, but I'll get into the comparison later. But I really do actually like this shape a lot. I typically always go for mice with bigger humps and not this slow of a drop off, but it actually felt really good in hand. It really locked in like this bottom portion of my palm. I typically like from the middle down, but just this part was actually really good for stability because of its size also. Something that also is really, really good with the mouse is the side buttons. They're very, very big. They're very, very protruded too, and they're really easy to actuate, and they're in a really good spot too. They are using Kale 4.0 switches also in mouse 1 and 2 and not in the DPI. But some more things about the shape, slightly similar to what Final Mouse goes for with their Ultralight 2. The peak is at the middle, and then the bottom is like a slower drop off, and then the button height is pretty good. I do kind of wish that there was comfort grooves, but these clicks are by no means bad. Like, they're definitely really, really crispy. I do have a small build quality issue, but I'll get into that later. Just off of like initial feeling and how it came out of the box, it was really, really good. They did say that they individually quality controlled like all of them, so I do see that the build quality is actually like incredible. This thing is a fucking brick. Another thing that's really amazing about this mouse is the coating. This is really, really grippy. I don't think you'll ever have to actually buy like any aftermarket options for grips unless you want it to be a little bit bigger. The grip over here, and especially on the back, they just lock like your hand in place with the mouse. You can still slide your fingers across, of course, but it definitely reminds me of something like an M Game Gear XM1. It's really, really premium, and it is actually incredible that they got this kind of quality. After their first mouse, I didn't really think that the Meta had very good coating, but this is like way better. This is a huge improvement from their first mouse's coating. Another improvement that they did make is they opted for bigger feet this time, and this, in my opinion, is always going to be a better option. Depending on the pad that you use too, you do get more feedback with bigger feet, in my opinion, because I have been using core pads on my Phantom. I don't get as much feedback as I do with something like core pads on a ZA13. I definitely feel more of the pad, so I definitely get more control or speed depending on the pad that I want to use. So because these feet are really big, they're also very tapered. You can clearly see from the design, they're very, very good. I have had no issues with it being caught on any pads. The one issue that I did feel, they did make a tweet saying that remember to take the plastic off of the feet, and I genuinely thought that they were like the fastest fucking skates I've ever used, but there was plastic only on my bottom one. My top one didn't have any, so I went to town on the top. So there's, you can't see it, but there's tons of scratches on this because I was just picking at it for so long because I just couldn't find the plastic, and then I just completely gave up and just assumed that it wasn't there at all. But in terms of how they perform, I don't feel like they're as good as core pads, but they're definitely good enough to the point where you do not need an aftermarket option, though there aren't any right now, so it doesn't really matter. But they did do very well compared to their Meta feet, which were really fast, but I just didn't feel anything with any pad. They kind of just felt like normal stock feet, but these are much better. They're much more controlled. I don't feel they have as much speed as something like stock feet on a Phantom, but they definitely have control, which I personally do enjoy. Another thing is the battery life. So they did opt for RGB yet again on another mouse, and I definitely feel like, again, it's a bad idea, especially on wireless mice where battery life is incredibly important. I don't feel like I need to know the DPI of my mouse at every single given moment with the color, and I definitely feel like this diffuser all the way at the bottom, all this extra plastic, could have made it around 70-ish grams. Although there is RGB on the mouse, it hasn't affected the battery life nearly as much as I thought it would actually. I charged it to around 100%. I think it was like 90, and I haven't charged it since. I only used it for a week straight, but obviously I wasn't, you know, playing for 8 hours. A lot of it was schoolwork, general browsing, and then I was playing for maybe 3-ish hours, but I haven't needed to charge it yet, which is really, really impressive. The only downside to charging it, however, is it doesn't come with a typical adapter. It is just the cable, and then at the bottom will be the USB-C, and you just plug the USB into your computer. So it will not be anything like Pulsar. It won't be anything like Final Mouse, which is quite sad. I was really hoping that they would have opted for an adapter. It just makes charging and general connectivity a lot better because I did have to change the USB port that it was in. Originally, I had it on my USB hub in the back of my computer, but I did have a lot of times where it wouldn't track. It just wouldn't, like if I'm spinning my mouse or tracking somebody, it would just hold still on my screen or it would spin out. So I had to move it to the front of my computer, which is a little bit closer. And I'm not too sure what causes that issue. I just wanted to bring it up. So maybe just have have it at a USB port that is a bit closer to you, a bit closer to where the mouse is, because mine had connectivity issues when it was further away. In terms of the clicks are actually amazing. Even on their meta, I said that their clicks were actually fantastic. I still prefer Kale 8.0s, but Kale 4.0s are still really nice. To me, a nice in-between of something that is a really clicky switch and something that is a bit softer, because judging these from like an XM1R, the XM1R is definitely like harder to actuate. It feels a bit heavier, but it feels much more crispy. But these have a little less crispiness, but they're a lot easier to actuate. So I really feel if you don't like Kale 8.0s, I think 4.0s are a really, really good in-between for you. The only issue I had was if I click somewhere around here or even here for the mouse, it creaks a lot and I can feel it when I click the mouse. Although it doesn't happen in game, it was just really bizarre that I didn't use the mouse for around a week, and it kind of feels like you're crunching like a potato chip bag on the sides of the mouse. Like I said, it doesn't happen in game, but it is just a sad downside because they did put a lot of effort into this mouse and they did QC check it. But I did see on Twitter that a lot of other people had a bit of QC issues after the fact also. In terms of weight, it is 75 grams, and that is definitely on the heavier side of mice, especially for what I'm used to. I'm much more used to the Phantom, you know, a ZA13, even a XM1, I feel like is on that heavier-ish side for people nowadays. As per usual, you know, they have RGB diffusers and stuff like that, just add on to the weight. I feel like it could have slimmed down to maybe 72, 70 grams, but regardless, it is still a good weight. You don't really notice it if you're on something like a Hien Ayate Otsu, something a bit speedier. Even on stuff like a Gamesense Radar, the Kovacs pad, kind of notice it with control pads, but mostly control pads like an Odin Eclipse, a GPZ1, really slow pads. That's definitely where you're going to get more fatigue. Although I haven't actually felt any arm fatigue while aiming, and I'm a very, very low sense player. Now onto the comparison of two WMO inspired shapes. The Ninjutsu Katana is definitely a large mouse. I don't even categorize this as medium. This thing is fucking huge. You can definitely see side by side how much bigger the Katana is to the MVP. The MVP is much more small. It's much more nimble. It's definitely like a perfect medium mouse in my opinion. Holy shit, it's dying during recording. Okay. The MVP is definitely like smaller feeling than a G Pro in hand, but it's probably because the middle of the mouse is not nearly as tall and as bulky as a G Pro. The flare on the Katana is just gigantic. You can see it from the bottom too. There's also barely any indentation, so it is slightly harder to get a grip on this mouse, especially since the coating is really bad. In terms of the shape, if you are a smaller handed person, just go with a MVP. It's gonna just be better overall. It is not worth the trouble of trying to claw grip this mouse. Like, it is just so big. My fingers can barely reach the top of the mouse button. The other thing too is the side buttons do not even compare on both mice. The MVP is just leagues better. It is in a much better placement. They're much more protruded and they're bigger. They also feel much more crispy. The Katana, just everything on this mouse just feels so cheap to me. The side buttons especially, they feel so hollow. There's just nothing that like really stands out with the side buttons. They're just so like normal, I guess. They're really just lacking. I can't really describe it and just how disappointed I am with the feeling of these side buttons. The clicks are a bit better. They definitely feel like something like the original G Pro wireless. They don't feel like a super light. The other thing too is the weight difference is gigantic. This is a 60 gram mouse compared to a 75. Although the weight difference is very big, the quality feeling is definitely, I feel like, a big factor in it. This feels like much thicker plastic, much more dense, and this feels very hollow and very like flimsy. I can still actuate the DPI button from clicking down here. Although it is very, very hard and you'll never do it in game, it is just something that's really weird to me. Coating is also very important for me personally because I go to the gym, I sweat a lot on my hands basically throughout the whole day. From when I train until the nighttime, I do sweat quite a bit on my hands. Because of my sweat, I do tend to slip out of some mice. That's why you see my XM1R with grips on it. Typically mice that have very good coating, like an MVP, I will not need any grips for the mouse, but this is definitely a mouse where I would 100% need grips for. Feet, they're pretty decent on the Katana. They don't feel like anything special. They're definitely faster than the MVP feet. It could just be because of the weight again, but the MVP feet are much thicker. They definitely feel like aftermarket skates. It's not that these are super thin either. The Katana skates are also not that bad. Like, they're definitely not the thinnest feet I've ever felt, like on Zowie feet, but these feet are just slightly thinner than the MVP feet. They're not like horrible. You can clearly see that there is a cable. I would definitely say paracord this or get a lethal cable because this cable is definitely one of the worst cables I've ever used. It is not as bad as a Vaxi mouse, but it is very, very close to that level of horrid. Also, if you don't get this mouse purely on the fact that it has a cable, you kind of make me cringe. Just a lot, actually. Another thing I want to say is software. I did not put anywhere near near as much time in this Katana as I did my MVP. I have used the Gamesense software. It's really bare bones, but I actually do like how it's laid out. It's very, very simple. It's not too complicated to get used to, but that's just the thing with wireless mice is you kind of do need software. You're never going to know your battery life. You're not going to be able to customize it as much as you would want to. That's kind of why I lean towards wired mice. I don't really like having to download an external program to mess with my mouse setting, but that is just going to be dependent on you. If you're okay with software, then it doesn't really matter. But yeah, that's pretty much all for the review. It is pretty weird coming back to reviews after like 3 weeks of not actually doing one. Please bear with me. I am trying to get back into the swing of things. I do have a plethora of new products that I'm going to be able to review, things that I'm actually passionate about. This mouse was really good, but it really didn't make me feel like, wow, you know, it didn't really like pop out to me, but it is still a very good mouse. If you are wanting a WMO clone, I would definitely just suggest an MVP. They're running a sale right now for $10 off, and you can actually get it in hands right now. I know that the Katana just came out with their super light, but like I said, I cannot trust this kind of quality if the coating, if the feeling of the mouse, if the hollowness is another thing, and then the only thing it might have going for it is the battery life, maybe being better than an MVP. I just can't recommend this mouse, and I don't think I ever will. But yeah, that pretty much is all for the review, and I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. Peace. Is that a head? It is a head.
It's right there at the fireplace. It's going that way. Doesn't even have the fuse.
Actually, like horrifying.
Jackals on site to the right corner.
Someone is tracking you.
Thank you. Good call.
Second
One friendly remaining.
Actually, we'll shoot for one.
Op 4, last op.
I'm gonna ping. One's right there. You went to the hall? Oh, there's a...
Crouch peeking. Wherever you can. Still walked in left side.
Bro, shut the fuck up.
Not all the way in yet.
I'll peek.
Time expires in 10 seconds. 5 seconds. Peek, bro. Op 4 eliminated.
I heard someone back here. I got them ears, girl. It's probably garage. Got her.
Nice shot. Ow. What a good time for a scout.
She has a shorty. She's guaranteed there.
Nothing, no one's there.
Behind us, rotate. Behind us, man.
Dang, she just run and gunned us. She's just better.
She's got insta headed.
I saw one.
Yeah, there's a lot in heaven right now.
Done.
There's a raised girl.
Okay, this Neon doesn't want to hold anything.
4 dead.
And one is on.
You like check just one.
Hey, double A's, baby. Simon, let's fucking.
Who?